Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the Transcultural Nursing class, we'd like to welcome you to our Windows to the World presentation. Today we're going to be talking about our experiences that we had on our Jamaica Study Abroad trip. First off, we'd like to thank our advisors, Dr. Humphrey and Dr. Teasley.
Thank you for coming and welcome. They've got a treat planned for you today. Special thanks for this happening. For this trip to happen is Sarah Spear backwards. Thankful for winning to the world and we want to thank Holly Conger. She has been took a big load off of me this semester with her assistance, and Dr. Patterson, we just thank you so much for attending. We've got a special treat for you, and also I would like to thank Dr. Daniel for allowing us to have this trip. Thank you very much, and without further ado.
So up front is the group that went on the Jamaica trip. My name's Erica Kramer. I'm a senior nursing student.
And I'm Lindy Sanderson. I'm a senior nursing student.
I'm Tash Walton. I'm a senior nursing student.
I'm April Decker. I'm a junior nursing student.
I'm Macy Crawford. I'm a junior nursing student. I'm Carson Steer. I'm a junior nursing student.
I'm Blessed Sarah. I'm a junior nursing student.
I'm Peter Wilbur. I'm a junior nursing student.
I'm Skippy Lavada. I'm a junior nursing student.
I'm Camilla Vines. I'm a junior nursing student. I'm Lindsay Fetter, a senior nursing student.
All right, so first off, we'd like to talk about the things that we did on our trip. This is our itinerary. On the first day, we departed from Atlanta, had a layover in Fort Lauderdale, and then we arrived in Montego Bay, Jamaica the same day. Later on, we went to the Pork Pit, which is like a barbecue place where they served jerk chicken and traditional Jamaican food, and that's where we had dinner, and then we settled into the mission house at Jamaican Link Ministries. On the second day, we went to a church service at Jamaica Link Ministries, and then it was pretty much our free day where we had the opportunity to do the things that we wanted to do. So we had the option to go to a private beach, a public beach. We had the opportunity to get our hair braided. We went shopping and snorkeling, and these are just some of the pictures of us snorkeling and a picture of the private beach that we had the opportunity to go to. On the third day, we started touring the hospitals. And that corner right over here is the hospital that we got to tour the most. That's Savannah Lamar Hospital. We'll talk more in depth about that. Right here is the Cornwall Hospital, which is a public hospital as well. We did not have the opportunity to go inside there, but we just got to see the outside. They were dealing with some noxious fumes. In this corner right over here is the private hospital called Hospice that we got to tour inside. And this is just our little group. On the fourth day, we got to go to the Rastafarian village and the St. James Infirmary. We're going to talk more in depth about the Rastafarian culture and the St. James Infirmary as well. So these are just a couple pictures from that. On the fifth day was another fun day. We got to go to Island Gully Falls. We went to Usain Bolt's restaurant and Glistening Waters Lagoon. And then we went home. It was a great trip. So we're going to talk a little more in depth about the culture of Jamaica with Lindsay and Tash. Lindy and Tash. We'll just slide this around here.
All right, so there were actually three of us students who were senior nursing students who went on this trip with our community class instead of the transcultural nursing class because we had already taken transcultural last year. And so this was actually my second opportunity to go to Jamaica. It was really fun last year, so I wanted another opportunity to go back. And we felt that this trip would actually tie in really well with our community class because we see a lot of different things about our community here, and then we go to Jamaica and we kind of compare those things between here and there, and so we learned a lot of different things that I didn't even notice last year because I wasn't really looking for it. So some community facts that we kind of did a windshield survey was one of our assignments that we had while we were there. And while we were just kind of driving around, we paid attention to what the houses and buildings looked like in the area. And so some of the things that we noticed that were more predominant, we saw a lot of the homes being built out of bricks, a lot of concrete, and some of them were actually built out of plywood, which you can see a little bit up at the top. A lot of the houses were actually unfinished. We tended to notice that, in which when we were talking to the Jamaican people, they would tell us that they would start building these really elaborate homes. They would run out of money, and they would just stop building it until they could get more money to finish it later. And a lot of the homes as well, you could actually see rebar sticking out of the top. They would finish the bottom layer of a home. They'd wait till they got more money, but they put rebar on the top so that later, if they made more, they could go back and add extra stories to their house. The houses tended to be very colorful, which on an island, that kind of makes sense. You did see drastic, very noticeable differences between the houses that people maybe tourists that come and stay on the island for short periods of time. They had very, very nice, elaborate homes. And then the people that are actually from the area that maybe didn't have as much money, those houses you could tell were very, very more, I guess, just not as nice, I guess you could say. And with the actual community, driving around, there is a lot of excess trash just on the road. In the rivers, you could see a lot of trash. There were quite a bit of stray animals as well. You had cats, dogs, goats. You even saw cows on the side of the road just hanging out, eating grass. That you couldn't really tell who they belonged to because they weren't in fields or anything like that. Their air in the city limits was more congested. It wasn't as clear as, what we have around this area. The water quality of the private beach was very, very nice. But like I said, if you were just kind of walking down the street where you have the public beaches or any of the rivers, there tended to be a little bit more trash that people just kind of walking by, they would just throw their trash on the ground instead of finding a trash can for it. And we tend to avoid drinking the tap water while you're there because it's just not as safe as what we have here.
So education-wise, education was very important and to the whole population of the island. One of the nurses I spoke to at the hospital said that if the students do not show up to class, they will actually essentially hunt them down, knock on the door and drag them butts back to school. They go to school, I think they start at 3 years old, through until 18, I believe it is. There's private schools and there's public schools. One thing that was noticeable, and particularly to, I guess, some of us here who were not raised in this country, that all of the students wore school uniforms, which was absolutely fabulous. And no matter what area they came from, whether they came from a lower socioeconomic area of the island or not, the uniforms were impeccable. It showed a lot of pride. The kids had a lot of pride in themselves. That's something that I think that we could learn here, most definitely. But there was plenty of access to the education was not a problem. It was everywhere. We looked, there was education. Religion, many churches of all different denominations, and plus the island has their own religion. Rastafarian, that some people follow. And transportation, well, that was an experience. It'd be a good place to learn how to drive because you would probably be able to drive anywhere in the world if you can drive on the island of Jamaica. It was a bit, and there was a lot of people that it seemed had grown up in the 80s and were playing Frogger. There was a lot of people walking the roads, and they had to swerve a lot to miss the pedestrians, and I don't know how there was not more traffic accidents that we didn't see more when we were there because it was absolutely amazing. I know there's some of us felt a little bit queasy on a couple of the trips. Just because of the pure speed and movement and Yeah. There really was it didn't seem to be any organised public transportation. There was no specific bus stops, if you like. People would stand together in the corner and wave their hand, and it wasn't like a bus like we have here. It was more like a minivan, and they'd load up, and there'd be maybe 20 of them that would load up in that bus. How many people can you fit in a mini minor? And Jamaicans could fit a lot. A lot. Motorcycles, a lot of motorcycles, no helmets, which I guess someone else is going to speak about that, are they? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's an experience, transportation in Jamaica. Mm-hmm.
All right, and so with the healthcare, this picture right down here at the bottom is Savannah Lamar again, and then Hospiton up at the top is the private hospital. So with Cornwall Regional and Savannah Lamar, those are two of the hospitals we got to see that were the public hospitals, and Hospiton is the private hospital, and healthcare in Jamaica is basically free of charge, and the only people that go to the private hospital are people that have insurance. And so a lot of the people that are actually from Jamaica that live there all the time, they do not have insurance, so they're going to be the ones that are going to visit the public hospitals. And the private hospital that we went to is very, very nice. It's very similar to what you would see here in America. And the people that you tend to see there are the tourists that come to visit. So we're going to talk more about this here in a little bit, but that's just kind of a little overview of the healthcare that we got to see. Okay, who's over this?
While we were in Jamaica, we got to experience some of the Jamaican music, and where we were staying, it was called Hip Strip. And that was very lively at night, and at night you can hear them playing Jamaican music, and they would actually have song battles, and you can just hear how free-spirited the music was. We also got to experience some of the Jamaican food. Some of the food we got to experience was bammy, and it's a hard corn-like bread. We also got to experience festival. It's kind of like a funnel cake. And we also got to experience rice and beans, which is their signature dish, and also jerk chicken, which is marinated in a spicy sauce, and oxtail, and curry goat, and meat pies, which are also called Jamaican beef patties. And basically, they're like Hot Pockets, and they can be filled with veggies, cheese, or chicken. And also, we got to try some of their fried plantains. And here are some pictures of the food that we got to experience. Okay, so here are some of the words and phrases that we learned. In Jamaica, they do speak English, but the dialect is called Patois, and it's basically their native slang. And some of the words and phrases we learned were tree, which can mean the number 3, or it can also refer to an actual tree. And the next one is yaman, which is just saying yeah. And then next one is Irie, which just means a good life. Everything is on top of the world. And the next one is no problem, and that's just a laid-back way of saying there really isn't a problem. And the last one is one love. And in Jamaica, they're very united people, and love is very important amongst them.
All right, so one of the places that we visited was St. James Infirmary, and they also called it an old folks home, and it's just a nursing home, or equivalent of a nursing home. It consisted of several different buildings. They've separated male and female.
On the far side right there, that's the male ward, and I think on the next few slides you'll see the female wards. The female wards had psychiatric patients as well, mixed in, and the male wards had a separate ward for the psych patients. For the females, there's about 10 people in each building, and there were 3 buildings, although I think one of the buildings housed some males. The male ward had over 40, and it had some psych that were in the back, and then they had their regular med-surg patients. So this is actually a view inside of the male ward. One of the few things that we noticed was that there's no privacy. Literally the beds are pushed together, as you can see up here. They don't have a curtain to separate. You don't have your own separate room. You all live together. They were only allowed very minimal possessions from their previous homes and families. They didn't have very many visitors that we could tell. We never saw any visitors there. They had 24-hour nursing, so an actual nurse stayed in the building with the patients, especially with one of the buildings. Like they had a nurse that stayed in there for her shift, and that was her job, was to watch the residents and make sure they had everything they needed, nothing happened. The residents that could walk were allowed outside, and I think on one of the previous slides, we did have one lady who walked around and toured the facilities with us, and she was really, really sweet. They love to take pictures, and we found out it's because they don't have mirrors, and so a picture for them is a mirror. They can look at themselves, and they loved it. They wanted to take 1,000 pictures. We also handed out goodie bags while we were there, and it contained basic health supplies, your toothbrush and toothpaste. We did give them a file with a mirror, a timer. It was a 2-minute timer, so they could use it primarily for brushing teeth, but there were other purposes that they could use it for as well. Soap, a pen, and dental floss. With the pen, there was one lady that really, really loved a pen because she really wanted a mark in her Bible, and told one of the students that that made her day, that she loved it.
We went to the public hospital called Savannah Lamar. Their attire was all white for the nurses. The nurses' aides wore pink bottoms. The pink accents were found with some of the nurses who took care of the infants and the children, and the students wore blue and white. We noticed about the public hospital that they mainly work together and they improvise because, of course, they don't have a lot of resources, and they did a lot of paper charting. Like, we probably saw maybe one computer on the floor, and we doubt that it even worked.
Alright, so I'm going to talk about the public hospital, Savannah Lamar. There were a couple different units in the hospital, nothing like what we're used to. They weren't as big, but they did have an emergency room. They had an OR, a men's ward, a women's ward, OB, and pediatrics. And they separate all the wards by floors. So the men and women are separate, and the peds and OB are separate. One of the things we found was it was a low acuity facility, so they treat like the bare minimum. Mostly the only thing they're able to do there is x-rays. So any of their patients requiring more in-depth studies, they had to know that there was a good prognosis, and then they would fly them to another hospital that could better equip their services. But the common stuff that was there while we were there were like minor fractures, which they say happen a lot from motor vehicle accidents and falls, diabetes, hypertension, certain cancers that they were able to take care of, a lot of pregnancy, stroke, MI, and wounds. And like I said, due to the smallness of the hospital, they weren't able to treat a lot, but they did what they could. So there's limited patient privacy. No patient has their own room in the public hospital. All the beds are pretty much lined up together. Only thing that really separated patients was like a screen, a curtain that you could close. And really, while we were there, not many people had it closed. So everybody was pretty familiar with everybody's disease process. If they had visitors, everybody was kind of aware of everybody else's visitors. They didn't have their own bathrooms, their own showers, nothing like that. The equipment, like Camilla said, mostly it was paper charting. They weren't really as advanced as we are with equipment. One of the interesting things we saw was their traction device. Nothing like what we have. They took water jugs and actually built their own traction devices from their fractures, and they pretty much worked with anything that they could. And that was very interesting because I know here we freak out if we don't have what we need when we need it in our clinical setting. So it's really good to see them work together and come up with ways that they could still administer good patient care. And as far as the population at this hospital, you're only going to see the Jamaican natives. You're not going to see any tourists. It's pretty much the poor public hospital, and because it's free, they're pretty much going to treat their own.
The hospital, as you can see, how nice it looks, of course. It's the newest hospital in Montego Bay, and it's a 29-bed facility, 5 ICU rooms, 2 operating rooms, a birthing room, and outpatient consultation. And there are approximately 150 professionals that work at the hospital. And that at the bottom is one of their newly renovated rooms.
Okay, the Hospice private hospital is actually an international network of private hospitals that offer high-quality health care, and it's in many different countries, including Jamaica, Mexico, Spain, and the Dominican Republic. And it accepts most private health insurances, so this is the hospital that you would see tourists go to if they needed anything. And since the health care in Jamaica is paid for by the government, you won't see like locals being treated in this hospital. They would go to the public hospital. And the patients' rooms are private and made to be as home-like as possible, like you saw in the on the previous slide, the pictures of it, how it had nice like pictures on the wall, nice like comforter. And family are encouraged to stay in the room with the patient, and the rooms also have a large pull-out couch for the family. And this hospital is comparable to hospitals here in the U.S., but it is a state-of-the-art hospital. And it offers full medical amenities, including lab, pharmacy, outpatient procedures, and diagnostic testing.
Okay, so now I'm going to share with y'all our trip to the Rastafarian village. I'm just going to go over a brief background so y'all know what it's about. So Rastafarian beliefs originated in the 1930s. Only 5 to 10% of their population is Rastafarian, with the largest population being Christian. In Ethiopia, the word Ras means head or chief, and Tafari means to follow or to have respect for. And those who identify with this group are Afrocentric, and they're trying to rediscover their black identity. So it's more of a movement than it is a religion. Some history. So it basically started due to the Atlantic slave trade. Out of the 10 million enslaved Africans, about 700,000 ended up on the island of Jamaica. Slavery was abolished in 1834 in Jamaica, but the free Africans were still viewed as a lower citizen. This is a picture of Marcus Garvey, and he was one of the major influences of black self-empowerment. During the Civil War, he did not support the Africans in the Americas who were trying to have civil rights and work on that movement. He thought that they should all remain as a group, and they should all move back to their homeland of Africa and remain separate from the whites. He promoted his beliefs throughout the 20s and the 30s, and the people who were influenced by him the most were the Jamaicans that were the lower class. This is a picture of Haile Selassie I. So in 1920, Garvey said, "Look to Africa, when a black king shall be crowned, for the day of deliverance is at hand." And in 1930, Haile Selassie I was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia. And this is when the movement, the Rastafarian movement, officially began. Even though Garvey didn't associate himself with the actual movement, a lot of Rastafarians view him as their prophet.
Okay, I'm going to talk about their beliefs. Mainly, they were Christian-like beliefs with their own twist, and they believe in the existence of a Trinity God, Jah being their God, and Yeshua being their Jesus, along with a Trinity of themselves, so it creates a perfect union of balance. Some believe that the last emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie I, is an incarnation of Jah, and rather than worshiping their God, they believe that with time they will become God. And there's 3 mansions of Rastafari, which is similar to our denominations. The first is Nahabenji, Bobo Ashanti, and then the 12 tribes of Israel. And then the Rastafarians themselves claim Ethiopia as their country. They do not claim Jamaica. They also do not have the best relationship with the Jamaican government or the people of Jamaica, and are sometimes looked down upon. The first man stated that his mother would tell him to get on the other side of the road when he saw a Rastafarian because they were not anything but trouble. And then their flag is the original Ethiopian flag, and it's red, yellow, and green with the Lion of Judah on it.
Okay, so I really enjoyed the Rastafarian village personally. I kind of, I don't know, I just really liked their way of life. It was very different and eye-opening. So I just came up with some fun facts that I thought were really interesting. Their way of eating is called idle eating. This means that they only eat what they can grow on their lands, and if they don't actually grow it on their lands, then they buy it from reputable sources. They don't eat meat, and they consider that 2 murders, the first murder being the killing of the animal, and then the second murder being the killing of their bodies for eating the animal. They always have a fire going, and the reason why is because they feel like fire represents change, and they feel like the world is just constantly changing around them, and so they're trying to adapt while still holding on to what they see as true to themselves. Marijuana was legalized for them to use on their lands in April of 2015. It is illegal in Jamaica still, but most people don't abide by that, and you'll see it everywhere. But for them in particular, it was a big thing for them to be able to get it legalized. It's part of their practices of their culture. They believe that it's a healing thing, and it's just like a mind thing for them. Their language is based on not using words like under because they consider it negative. So like instead of saying, I can't really remember exactly what he said, but instead of saying like underestimated, they might come up with a word that means like overestimated or overestimated or something like that. And then they don't use the word I because they don't like to individualize themselves. They consider themselves like a group. But everyone's names start with the letter I. So like if you have your name, put the letter I in front of it, and that's what your name would be in Rastafarian. Their elders mean a lot to them and hold a really important part of their life. Most of the time the elders, they have a job, and the people of the tribe like look to them for advice, and they want them to keep doing the job until they don't want to do it anymore. And even when they don't want to do it anymore, they still love them to be a part of it. And so their personal trinity in this village is the Father, the Son, and the Mother. And first man, which I'll show you a picture of him in a minute, he just thought, like, why would you not include a mother in their trinity? You can't have a family without a woman. So it was just kind of interesting. So these are just some of the pictures that I took. That's the fire that they kind of have going. It's not really fire, it's just the smoke is going. The left over there, his name is King Tutto. He's one of their elders. He makes drums, and they were playing some of the drums that he built 50 years ago, and they're still using them. Over in the middle right here, you'll see Dr. Humphrey with First Man. It's kind of a dark picture, but he was kind of the guy that did our tour for us, and the thing we all noticed too, I think, is that they know more about us than we know about them. And it's interesting because he would say stuff about our politics, about our culture, and we were like, oh, we don't know anything about you, so keep telling us, you know. And then that bowl right there is fruit. Some of it we don't have here in the States. I don't really eat some fruit, but I ate all of it because I was like, I want to eat it all, and it was all very good. This picture right here at the bottom is a plant that they actually use to make cosmetics out of, and you can just stick your finger in there and put it on for lipstick. It's kind of neat. So, and then they have cats everywhere. That was actually one of the only places that I saw a lot of cats. Everywhere else there was a lot of dogs. So this is kind of underneath their big gathering place, and he said that they gather there often. But they dance, they sing, they play their instruments, and it's a way to get close to their ancestors. They feel very connected when they do that. Singing and dancing is ritualistic for them, and it just kind of celebrates their life and their struggles. They make songs
their own songs that they write that have to do with their struggles and their life. And their voices were just beautiful. They were so good. So there's a little bit more about that plant. And then over here is their personal garden. They had over like 100 and something things in their garden, I feel like she said. Lots of it were herbs, things you cook with. But specifically, she said that it's used in their sip. And they call soup sip because they don't like the way the letter U goes down, like bangs down. So that's how another way they like to be positive. But sip, they make it almost every day, and they use all the stuff in their own area to make it. And so this is First Man right here. This is just showing you a little bit about how he's dressed. They're very plain. They don't, like wear the nicest clothes. He was just like, we just like to be comfortable. And he was barefooted the whole time. I wouldn't have been able to walk barefoot. Most of them were barefooted. And then this was underneath the gathering area. They let us play the drums with them while they sang. So, is this the last slide? Okay. So right now we're going to show you just a quick video that we put together of some of the things that we did throughout the week. And then at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Let me start that one here. Like how Martin Luther King would have started. My dream, my dream, my dream, my dream, my dream. Tell you my dream is to live my dream. Hear the most I in me sleep when me sleep. Tell you my goal, my goal, my goal. All of my goal is to reach my goal. Live a happy life, put it on me headstone. Nobody no fi cry over me dead. Look at me now, when them treat me less than gold. Put me in a box like a rectangle. Oh, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now. And me just tell you my life, where them used to go round me, go round. No one used to come round me, my life was so lonely. Look at me now, look at me now, look at me now. Me a take plane like JUTC. When you see me, it's on TV. Shows after shows after shows after shows. Tours after tours after tours after tours. When me name call, it's like roars after roars. Sweet melody and chorus after chorus. Them lock a one door, me bust doors after doors after doors after doors after doors after doors. Look at me now, where them treat me less than gold. Put me in a box like a rectangle. Oh, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now. And me just tell you my life, where them used to go round me, go round. No one used to come round me, my life was so lonely. Look at me now, look at me now, look at me now. The blessing does a flow over, this a copia and a cover. Judge a soldier, from boardhouse to sidewalk to leather sofa. Them say me living like the Cosa Nostra. No sir, me no mix up in a coca. Marijuana no dust to the nose, yeah. I no powder, not a obia, can't get over. Look at me now, where them treat me less than gold. Put me in a box like a rectangle. Oh, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now. And me just tell you my life, where them used to go round me, go round. No one used to come round me, my life was so lonely. Look at me now, look at me now, look at me now. Me and thank God for me blessing. No, me can afford to give back to some of the same people. Them were used to set things, all who used to set him. Now bust him, can't bust them. Same one I take bust, come on stage trophy, call up them. But me still a call up them. Bust them, but me can't trust them. See them, but me not touch. No, hate them, but me can't love them. From Trenchtown, our next star rise again. Look at me now, where them treat me less than gold. Put me in a box like a rectangle. Oh, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now. And me just tell you my life, where them used to go round me, go round. No one used to come round me, my life was so lonely. Look at me now, look at me now, look at me now. Look at me now, where them treat me less than gold. Put me in a box like a rectangle. Oh, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now, oh, look at me now. And me just tell you my life, where them used to go round me, go round. No one used to come round me, my life was so lonely. Look at me now, look at me now, look at me now.
This is Marcy Chin representing for Dancehall Dope Boy. Marcy Chin up on the beat.
Here comes Cure again. For the ladies, them, yeah. My love is deeper than the ocean, baby. My love, my love. I waited so long for this moment, girl. Yeah, and now I'm so happy for this moment. Yeah. Oh, we gotta live for this moment. 'Cause you are my girl, and this is our world. Yeah, let me wrap my arms around you. Yeah, and show you how much I care. I don't wanna let you go. No, no, no. I pray to Jah, you stay. My love is deeper than the ocean, baby. My love is drowning in emotion. Yeah, my love.
Any questions?
I have a question. So you said that they understood our culture, our politics a little bit more than, of course, we understood theirs. How? How did they learn about us so fluently?
I'm not really sure how they learned about us, but it was very, he would make comments about like, he used to ask the question, something about,
What we thought about our government.
yeah,
Americans are exempt from that question after this election.
yeah.
That's one thing he told us.
Most of it was social media though. They use a lot of social media, like everything that we use, they use. I'm pretty sure has a lot to do with that as well.
And I feel like since it was a very touristy area, he was exposed to a lot of different cultures, like people coming in to see about Rastafarian culture. So he got to learn about
People that where they came
people
from, yeah.
through the tour, like people coming in to see it.
They even made jokes about like how we're now like all in love with coconut oil, and she's like, well, we've been doing that forever, but now everybody in America wants, coconut oil is so healthy, so they know.
Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned about the water being kind of unsafe at the beginning. What about the food? How did you feel about it?
It was so good.
I feel like at that point we weren't too worried about it. It was just so appetizing.
Well, everything was cooked too, so everything was cooked. I mean, what we did eat that wasn't cooked was the fruit that we got from the Rastafarian people, and I felt very confident that if they eat it and they're good, we're good. So.
Most of the time we were eating at like roadside stands or like dining places that were outside. And so you had flies and stuff like that. For me, that's really hard, being a nurse. And so I had a whole hard time with that, but none of us got sick. You usually could find something that you liked.
I have a question. Did any of your experiences or perhaps preparation, what about public health infrastructure? Do you know how that operates and that?
As far as in the hospitals themselves?
Well, the public health system in general. Did you have that? I know your experiences didn't include that specifically, but
We had asked, but it's like
sanitation.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see posters and stuff everywhere, like, there was some talking about like how breastfeeding is for the mom and the dad, like encouraging the dad to help the mom, and then you'd see things about like, you see a lot of diabetic stuff there, like, I don't know, you see posters, but it's like no one really pays attention to them. But they did have a poster about the hospital, and you saw like the nurse's outfit, and they made her look very put together, and to me it would be like, okay, well I know I'm gonna get good help there, so, you know. One, yeah.
They can only be on the male floor, they can't work on the female's floor. if
Yeah.
they're members.
Sometimes the Rastafarian culture gets mixed up with drug use. Did you experience that, or validate or invalidate that?
There was a lot of drug use.
I think in general, just it is.
It was with a different mentality. I don't think it was, for them it's not negative, it's
Like a whole body
They
thing.
use it like have conversations. They use it, yeah, as a conversational over there. So like they also talked about whoever lights it is the one that has to start with
And praise over it.
prayers
Yeah.
and conversation, and then they can pass it on. It may just be just an excuse.
But it said it just opened up their minds so that they could experience life at a higher level. So, and I've heard people use that excuse here. And I guess in Jamaica, they get to use it as their religion. Yeah. And that's just my personal opinion, though.
For me, it was a lot different than what I've heard about. I was kind of on edge about going, but when we went, it was more so like they're just free people. Their whole like personality, how they are about family, they're just free. And it felt really good to be there, honestly. It wasn't more so focused on their drug use. He talked about it, but it wasn't like it was pushed down our throats. It was like something that was optional and just something they believe in, but it didn't mean that, that's really all they're about. It was, I liked it. It was a good experience.
And they don't view marijuana as a drug, they view it as an herb, whereas they would say a herb.
Any other questions? Well, thank you guys for attending our Witness to the World